Mersea, the most easterly inhabited island of the British Isles. Famously described in literature as a desolate region and yet not without beauty. Here, the end of the Ice Age carved the landscape, and as the sea claimed the land, it spared the smallest of parts. It is an isolated pocket, an oasis rising from the mud, a well-hidden gem. And it is rich with wildlife. In this haven on the eastern coastline, the life is found in many forms. Birds, mammals, reptiles, insects, and a wide variety of plants eke out a living at the edge of the sea. And living on a small island, one thing has a bearing to a greater or lesser extent on them all: the tides. The tide is important because it cultivates the rich feeding grounds on which many species rely. When the sea retreats, it exposes a treasure, the Mersea mud. What might seem like a lifeless sludge is anything but. This is where this unique ecosystem builds its foundations. It is winter. The island's residents are finding food where they can. But out on the estuarine mud, even in the coldest of seasons, there is always a meal to be had. Estuarine mud is packed with nutritious food, from tiny crustaceans to worms and shellfish. A multitude of birds rely on the exposed flats for meals and wait impatiently for the tide to recede. There are specialists and there are opportunists. Amongst the specialists are turnstones, who live up to their name by flipping stones at the water's edge, hoping to surprise the prey beneath. Winter sees the mud at its busiest, and amongst the visitors are black-tailed godwits, sifting for worms, invertebrates, and other tasty snacks. At this time of year, these migrants arrive in great numbers, piling into the fields and beaches to the east of the island. The tagging of birds has revealed they have travelled from as far afield as Iceland to reach the feeding grounds of Murzy. Whilst here they have a predominantly grey plumage. Once they return to their breeding grounds, the males will develop extensive orange plumage on their heads, necks and breasts, becoming a handsome sight for the females. But for now, the only thing on the agenda is food. This oyster catcher is another keen diner on the mud. His specially adapted bill is ideal for breaking into shellfish. But here, in a season where you must take what you can get, he's having more success finding worms. He seems a little more picky than the godwits, however. Upon locating a suitable worm, it is extracted and then carried to the nearest puddle, where it can be washed before being devoured. It is a process that is repeated religiously. During winter, the surrounding fields host a number and variety of birds which is staggering. Many of these birds are seasonal visitors seeking refuge from the harsh winters of their breeding grounds further north. Great flocks of widgeon, brent geese, lapwings, curlew and many other species graze on the grass or comb the waterlogged landscape in search of worms. The fields are simply buzzing with activity. It is a winter feast, and everybody is invited. Grey lag geese patrol the pools and the vegetation. Handsome teal busy themselves in the mud, while in the background shy and reclusive species such as snipe hide away at the edge of the fields. Others still, such as these golden plover, use the fields as a waiting area when the tide renders the mud inaccessible. On the nearby salt marsh it is equally as crowded, although these birds, like the golden plover, are waiting for the tide to recede. Something has spooked them and sent them scattering into the air. It's a kestrel, and he's not interested in waterfowl, but the birds are right to be wary. Bigger predators than kestrels patrol the skies of Murzy. Less than a mile from the feeding fields, the setting sun heralds the return from hunting of Mersey's raptors. This is the domain of the Marsh Harrier. Once driven to the edge of extinction, the Marsh Harrier is making a comeback. With a wingspan of 4 feet, these magnificent predators are amongst the kings of the Mersey skies. Here on the island, up to 20 birds will spend the night at this one roost. There is another similar-sized roost nearby. One by one, they come in for the night. Come the spring, they will disperse to find their own nesting grounds, but for now, they congregate together. Their presence unsettles a flock of brent geese, who take to the skies in their hundreds. But the harriers are no threat to full-grown geese, and soon the birds settle back to ground, reassured that this predator at least will not bother them. As winter relaxes its grip, the signs of spring begin to appear. The island starts to empty of its cold weather migrants, and the breeding species take center stage. This kingfisher is one who will leave, but she won't go far. Just over the estuary to the mainland, in fact, in search of a suitable male. Many other species will of course stay, These rooks are amongst many birds engaging in courting, mating and nest building, all the routines which will eventually result in new life. The welcome spring warmth encourages reptiles to emerge from their slumber. Here there are common lizards, climbing the tall grass stems to absorb the alluring warmth. And they are not the only reptiles to be found, if you have a keen eye. In gaps in the thick undergrowth, adders start to appear, basking in the welcome rays of sunshine. The adder is the UK's only poisonous snake, and they have spent the last few months in hibernation. Mersea is an ideal habitat for these impressive but shy creatures, and they continue to breed here and flourish. Away from the undergrowth, human civilization becomes more apparent, albeit in limited numbers. There is but one road onto the island, and at the highest tides, when this slither of tarmac submerges, Mersea becomes isolated from the mainland. It has been this way since the Ice Age, when rising sea waters carved through the land to create the Blackwater Colne estuary. The fossils of elephants and hippos are present in the sea cliffs, showing that 300,000 years ago, Mersea had equally fascinating but very different wildlife. This isolation has proved to be of great benefit to a variety of species, including one of our most loved and iconic. In a small pool near the shoreline, the clue to its presence is in these clumps of water reed stalks. Someone has been enjoying its favourite meal. It is, of course, a watervole. Living on Murzy, this watervole has a big advantage over many of its kind on the mainland: the lack of American mink. Since their introduction to the UK in the last century, mink have decimated the population of watervole, threatening to wipe out this charming little creature. There are ongoing efforts in place to reduce the number of mink with varied degrees of success. But here on the island it is not, currently at least, an issue, and the watervole thrives. As spring becomes summer, the insects take center stage. Colours of insects and flowers are almost Mediterranean, as the island basks in the lazy heat. Everywhere there are bold splashes of colour in abundance. On the estuary shore, the casts of thousands of crabs litter the tide line. These are not dead bodies, but exoskeletons which have been outgrown and shed by their owners. As the crabs are nocturnal in their habits, these discarded body shells are often the only visible clue to the abundance of this crustacean, and a decent indicator of the health of the water. Another species present in good numbers is the swallow. These aerial acrobats spend each summer on Mersea, sometimes having as many as 3 broods of youngsters. The lazy late summer days see them at their energetic best, chasing down insects and building up their reserves for the long migration to Africa. It will soon be time for that journey to begin. As the summer slips into autumn, a familiar shape in unfamiliar colours can be found in the long grass of the nature reserve. This is a wasp spider. Unrecorded in the UK before 1920, the species, originally found close to the Mediterranean, has gradually spread north through Europe. In doing so, it has become hardened to the cold weather and now survives and breeds, amongst other places, on Murzy. Autumn is breeding season for these spiders, and the female will mate with the much smaller and drabber male. It will be spring before the youngsters hatch, by which time the female will have died. Back out on the mud, there are plenty of birds still busy harvesting the rich offerings of the sludge. These include little egrets, who, like the wasp spider, are a recent colonist in the UK. Their primary diet is fish, but they will eat whatever they can get their razor-sharp beaks on. They are adept at both stalking and ambushing their prey in shallow water. Although they are here all year, October heralds a peculiar change in behaviour for these birds. Each day, as the tide rises and forces their retreat to dry land, large numbers of little egrets gather, at first in the air, and then to roost and wait out the interlude in a particular willow tree. Up to 100 birds will pack the branches, but only at this time of year. The reason is unclear, but it's a generally good-natured and peaceful affair, although there is little perching space available for so many birds. Sometimes the water's edge is the best bet. At least you may still grab a snack. Another quirk of the island's isolation is that there are no grey squirrels here. But there are reds. A small population of red squirrels have been reintroduced to the island in the hope of establishing a breeding colony. With no greys to compete for food or transmit the deadly pox, they have a fighting chance of succeeding. It's another unexpected charm of an island that already has charisma in abundance. The seasons have come full circle, and the cold days are close once again. The arrival of the wintering birds signifies that another year is drawing to a close. In both West Mersey's town and East Mersey's wilds, nature will do what it has always done. It will find a way to survive. It was in 1880 that the rector of East Mersey wrote, "A more desolate region can scarce be conceived, and yet it is not without beauty." For those fortunate enough to experience it firsthand, the beauty far outweighs the desolation.